Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. Tonight's topic, Mysterious Disappearances in National Parks and Forests, Part 2. I am your host, Spooky, along with your other host, the awesome Miss Raven.
Hey, so tonight's topic is going to be an interesting one for us, for sure.
Oh, yeah, tonight's topic was requested by several viewers.
Yeah, it was. It's one we've had requested lots of times throughout the years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, we're trying to get to all the viewer requests when we are doing these, but like we said before, with life's kind of keeping us away, but hopefully we'll get back in the swing of stuff soon, right?
Oh, hopefully. Now, although we had done a show on this topic before, both Raven and I planned on covering this again.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those repeating show series that we plan on doing, only because when we do our research, especially on this last one that we did, we came across like so many reports of people that go missing every year in our state parks or our national forests.
Yeah, and some missing cases that were just downright strange and mysterious, I think.
Hold on. I think the program was acting up for a second. Just checking. Oh, it's still going. All right. When I was going in and kind of looking about, because it's hard to pick, because you kind of want to just say all of them, so that hopefully these shows bring attention and out to the public more to keep people,
yes, they do.
Might know something or talk. But I know last time during my research, as well as this time, I was coming across all these different reports of these missing cases from old newspaper articles in Google News, or, I'd find it in all these missing databases. And it just really kind of shocked and saddened me, like, all the numbers I was coming across. And especially when you go to, like, the National Institute of the, Justice National Missing page of, like, Unidentified Persons System, or whatever the heck they call it, the NAMIS or whatever. And
yeah.
When I typed in there this time, national forest or state parks, just those few keywords, it came up with well over 1,000 cases.
Yeah, and not everyone who went missing is listed on that website either.
That's true. But there is a lot on there, but I know there's a lot of people that aren't on that website either, and then some are on, the FBI site or these other places. But when we did our first show on this topic, I think it was like 2 years ago, and I remember searching like the National Park Service website, because remember when we were doing the research to see, like, okay, is this missing 411 guy's information correct, or is he just selling stuff, to get more attention or whatever. And I remember going to their website, and I never saw anything regarding people that went missing, but we found other statistics, and we thought, well, that's weird. Why can they do this and not do that? But then here recently when we were doing research for the show, I decided I'm going to go back there and look again on the National Park Service. And I noticed that now they do have pages dedicated to their cold cases, as well as, missing persons or accidents that are listed on their site. But it's not like they have like every case put up there. But to me, I think that's a start that they're actually doing that now for all the people who are wondering and saying, like, why don't you do this? And with all the attention that brought up, I think it's pretty good that they're doing that now, at least.
Oh, absolutely. I noticed that too. I noticed that there were quite a few more cases, and I think that's great that they're getting them up there. That it at least lets you know that somebody's working the website. Mm-hmm. The United States has 154 protected national forest, parks, and water reserves all across the country, and these attract millions of people each year.
Well, according to that site that I was on, the NPS, National Park Service website, I was kind of looking just to see what here recently that they calculated, and it said on one link that they had at least 331 million people visit the parks and stuff. And the Smoky Mountains was actually one of the top visited places just this year in 2017. And then you have like the Grand Canyon and the other, like Yosemite, Yellowstone, like there's a popular one. But I was kind of surprised that Smoky Mountains was like way up on the top.
Well,
I mean, I know it's an awesome place.
Smoky Mountains, the Smoky Mountains are a beautiful place. I mean, I can see why many go there. Not to mention they have miles and miles and miles of hiking trails that go across Tennessee and North Carolina.
Yeah, I wanted to. When I was younger, I was like ambitious, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna go trek over those hiking trails and the Appalachian trails and all that stuff. But then we never ended up getting to it. It was probably a good idea I didn't. You know what I mean? I probably would have been one of those missing people. But I love the Smoky Mountains. And I've been there before, and we did hike on small areas around in there and stuff.
Excuse me.
But I was just kind of surprised that they were like on the top for this past year. Because didn't they have like a huge fire out there too?
Yeah, I think they did. But, you got to stop and think, for a moment. And with that many visitors every year camping and or day hiking through these national parks and forests, it's no wonder that someone, it's not a wonder, I should say, that someone doesn't get lost. I mean, many who go to these places are families from the city or other countries who have no knowledge or background history in the wilderness. They're wanting to take in the sights, not really knowing or prepared for the dangers that could potentially happen.
It's true. Because a lot of people, are young families or, are just like young people or sometimes even old people, they get those campers and they're like, we're going to travel the United States or whatever. So, and, a lot of us, we don't have this training and survival skills, when it comes to being out in the wilderness and in nature and stuff. And even though it is like a state or national land, it's still nature, and you still have like all those predators. And even though you got like some paved roads and some nice little campsites carved out, you're still in the wild. So, the most people could really, it's like they have to, like when you're talking to the park rangers and that stuff, they want you to talk to them because they are telling you, like, hey, be aware of your surroundings. You're out in the wilderness. You might, don't leave stuff out. You might attract bears or cougars or anything else. So, it's not like the city. It's not, you're potentially walking into danger at times.
Oh, yeah, I agree. You're stepping into their territory. A lot of people just are not prepared for those places. They're not prepared for as wild as those places actually are.
Right. I guess the only thing, because, like, I go camping a lot, and I've gone to different areas and stuff like that, but I do know, like, a lot of people, when they go into there, just know, like, when you are in these national forests or state parks, you're not going to have cell phone service in every area, or even the desert,
right.
You know what I mean? Because it's rugged country. They do have dead zones. So if you guys do go out to visit these places this spring and the summer and everything, or even in the winter people go to some of these places, you just don't rely on your technology,
Oh, no.
But go in prepared, you got to have a compass or a topical map of the area, and at least like a backpack with some survival items for any survival case that could possibly happen for that type of environment. Because even if you're just doing like a small day hike for an hour or not even on those trails, you don't know what could happen. So at least be prepared and talk to the DNR before you go out and that stuff.
Exactly, because you can very easy, you can get yourself turned around out there. You can get injured. You can succumb to hypothermia. Even if you're just going out for a little bit, take something with you just in case.
Yeah. Food, water, or a little
right
pit, but
something, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Those places are they're beautiful, they're gorgeous places, but they're filled with all kinds of things. Predators. You have bears. Just about every national forest has a bear, except maybe the one in southern Illinois. Well, but just go prepared.
Well, the trails
take
aren't like
water,
perfect.
Take something to eat. Whatever, a jacket or something, because it does get cold in those places at night.
Yeah, and we're just only saying this kind of a little bit now just because of all the missing cases that we've been researching for the past couple of weeks. So it's just like, we're just going to toss this out now in the beginning. Besides, you definitely want to bring beef jerky, so in case you come across Bigfoot, like here, big beef, some Mountain Dew and jerky for
That's another
Bigfoot,
thing. That's another thing. You don't know what kind of cryptid you might run into either.
It does happen, though, because some cases
yes,
I was reading, then you branch off to, like, is anybody missing in the Cascade Mountains or this or that? And then you do come across people who are encountering these cryptid type things. So it's like we're not trying to make a joke or light of it, but it is, you can have potential danger. But we just kind of want to say that early before we go into the missing cases tonight, because just because of so many things that we read, just we're researching, and all the families who are missing their loved ones, not knowing where they are.
Oh, exactly.
And never go hiking alone either, and tell somebody when you're going out, for sure. No. And where you're going. Absolutely. And when you want to, when you're going to return. So.
Right. Well, tonight both Raven and I picked a few missing cases that we'll be sharing with you guys. So Raven, why don't you go ahead with one of yours first?
Okay. The one I kind of picked is because I came across several newspaper articles from the 1960s in the Spokane area, because remember we were just doing Washington not that long ago, and then it kind of came across this stuff too as well. But his name was Bobby Panknin. Now he was this, I think he was like he was 4 years old, and he vanished in August of 1963 in the Stevens County, Washington area, not far from the Columnville National Forest. And it was in the summer of 1962 when Howard and Edna and their sons moved to the Spokane area. Now, Howard had just retired from his service in the Air Force early that June, and after returning from being stationed in Turkey. And he got himself a job, from what I was reading from the newspaper articles and what I was gathering, is he got himself a job delivering bread for the local bread company. Now, he and Edna and their boys lived on the 6,000 block of North G Street in Spokane, and they were a really happy, loving family. They were enjoying suburban life. I'm still trying to get used to talking live. I'm like, don't mess up. But, from all I could find, they were the perfect couple, happy family, and everything was just going great for them. And it was on Friday, August 2nd of 1963 when they went on a family camping trip at the Deep Lake Resort, which was a couple hours from their home, to kind of enjoy the late summer's month weather or what have you, what I mean? Now, on Saturday, August 3rd, Mr. Howard Panknin and their eldest son, 12-year-old Teddy, because they were already there, they decided they were going to go do a little fishing that afternoon at the nearby creek. So they were out fishing, and that left Edna and the other three boys kind of by themselves, and they were kind of getting antsy. So she said, hey, do you guys want to go for a little short hike and kind of enjoy the day? And so Billy, who was 10, Jimmy, 6, and of course 4-year-old Bobby, they went walking off, and they walked down this logging Forest Service road not far from their campsite at the Deep Lake Resort in northern Stevens County. Now, when they were walking down, of course, I have a picture up that's kind of similar to that which was the hiking forest road that they were on, except that there was a lot more cut down trees within the foliage and bunch of trees there. There is a newspaper article that I came across that has all the photos that show the people who were helping out and the photo of the actual forestry road and everything else, and I'm going to put it in our reference link so you guys can check out, you know what I mean? And I have all the newspaper articles there too, and tons of the photos, so you guys can go and look afterwards tonight after the podcast. But photo's kind of similar, except for it was a lot more wooded and thick. But when they were walking down this forestry road, Billy was hearing these sounds, the 10-year-old, and it sounded like running water and stuff. So of course he was kind of curious. So he walked off it's not even really a trail. It's basically these guys come in with their vehicles and they chop down a bunch of trees. So it's kind of like, it's not even like a dirt road. It's just kind of like a worn tire spots.
Like a man-made path.
Yeah, basically, but like a truck run in there, and they do this so they can get to certain spots in case a fire happens or what have you. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to help people kind of visualize this, and you got the brush and undergrowth all there and everything. So he kind of walked off the little path, I guess, if what you want to say, down the ways a little bit to go check out the sound of this running water. And, of course, to see, I guess there was a waterfall from what I was reading. But Bobby, the 4-year-old, he did not want to walk down in there. And he didn't want to leave the little forestry road to walk just a few feet in to see it, and he refused to leave the path. So, of course, Edna, the mom, told Jimmy, who was the 6-year-old, to kind of stay on the trail right there with Bobby while she followed Billy just a few feet away by the creek's waterfall. I mean, this is literally just like a couple steps down. You're going, they weren't even that far from, so she could see them basically a little bit. So she walked down because she was worried, that something like Bill might fall in the water, and she just wanted to make sure he would stay safe. So, Jim, the 6-year-old, of course, he's kind of curious, so he decided, like, hey, I want to go see the waterfall and check out the creek too. So he walked down and checked out to see what his brother and his mom was doing. And of course, Billy, he just stayed on his, or not Billy, Bobby stayed on the path alone on the forestry road. And from what I was reading, they weren't even 10 feet away. Now, of course, wow. Jimmy got bored, so he decided that he was going to return back to Bobby. But when he got back there, Billy didn't see Bobby at all. He didn't see him anywhere. So, of course, he hollered from, and Jimmy and his mom, they came back up where, like I said, they were only like 10 feet away. And they weren't even gone probably like a 2-3 minute time span, and he was just not on the little spot anymore. So, they had been calling and hollering for Bobby. They were looking up and down on that little road part. And, of course, he was barefoot. He wasn't wearing anything really but his, like, blue swimming trunks because, of course, they were playing in the lake earlier. You know what I'm talking about? So, he was just walking around with his barefoot and his swim trunks, no shirt or anything. And, they didn't see any footprints. They didn't hear him. They were looking under the thick underbrush. They were looking near the nearby stream. And in a 2 or 3 minute span, he couldn't have gotten that far. They would have heard something. You know what I mean?
Or he would have heard them.
Exactly. So Howard, the dad, and their 12-year-old son, Teddy, who the two that were off fishing, they ended up joining in the search for young Bobby that afternoon. Now, Teddy, the 12-year-old, or Ted, I shouldn't say Teddy, I'm sorry. Ted was searching up and down that type of road. And he was hollering for Bobby, and he got absolutely no response. They didn't find anything, to see, like, okay, there, like a path kind of go off that maybe he would have walked up this foliage area, because when you walk into the woods, you leave a trail like deer or anything else does, except for we're more clumsier. And then later on, of course, towards the later afternoon, the sheriff, A.E. Dutch Holter, and his deputies, they began searching for Bobby right before, dusk that Saturday. And they kept on searching throughout the night into the early morning hours, of Sunday. Now, there was a man that came up. His name was Clyde Creek. And now he arrived with his bloodhounds late that Saturday evening. And the sheriff offered Clyde, of course, one of the shoes of Bobby to kind of get the scent of him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't around till like midnight that the bloodhound, they said, hit on this scent, and they began trailing it for about 4.5 miles before it stopped dead in its tracks. Now, Clyde and the hound, they were constantly working until like 5 a.m. that Sunday morning with no luck, but it seemed like the dog would hit a trail and it would always hit the same thing, and it would always end at the same spot, because they'd keep going back and forth, you know what I mean? Trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And the papers said that the dog would lead these searchers at least 2 times up that same rocky, abandoned mountain road. And it was more of like rocky, grassy when you look at the pictures later on. But with its condition being so bad, the sheriff said that he was shocked that this barefoot 4-year-old boy would even walk it for that far, for 4.5 miles, all the way by himself. And how could he get like 4.5 miles that far without the, hearing the family or anything? You know what I mean? But both times the dog lost the scent at the exact same spot, which made them believe at the time maybe the boy turned back around and was retracing his steps, thus confusing this dog, which was basically what they were surmising. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or the boy just disappeared.
Yeah. Well, yeah, one or the other, you know what I mean? But I can only assume from that part of the articles that I had read on this case, you can only go with all the information that they're giving you. But as I continued to read different places and all these different newspaper articles and stuff, I read that there was at least 500 searchers that paired off in groups with, the aid and supervisors of like Holter or the U.S. Forestry Service that Sunday looking for young Bobby. They had several divers that would from the Stephen County Deep Lake Colville search, the Deep Lake area, you know what I mean? That's what it's called, Stephen County Deep Lake Colville. That was the name of their diver group or whatever. But they were even looking in the lake, which and the nearby creeks, by hand, they were digging through the weeded area and everything. But he was nowhere near the lake to get there that quickly without somebody seeing him. You know what I mean? But people from that area, they knew the surrounding areas. They were searching creeks. They looked at the lake. They looked in abandoned mine shafts and buildings. You had the citizens of Northport. You had the National Guard. You had a group of Canadian boys who were like camping in the area. They all joined in searching, looking for Bobby into the late hours of Sunday and into early Monday morning hours. And there was this guy, his name was Dick Hastings. He flew in from Seattle, and because he read the newspaper articles, and he had a bunch of trained bloodhounds. So he's like, well, I'm going to come help. So he volunteered their services and tried tracking the boy. And then there was this, also the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They came in with their German Shepherds too, looking throughout the area. And they all ended up with the same result. They didn't find Bobby at all. And people were walking, the woods and the roads. There was horseback riders. They were checking higher country. They even had gotten like aerial search going on by this, the Stephen County Air Posse. They had people who were, combing every lakes and creeks. And this is a 4-year-old who's barefoot with just a swim trunk. And they were spreading way far out. Because, I guess, sorry for coughing, guys. I mean, a kid can get far in a short time period. But we're going already through nighttime into the next days, Hold on, I gotta drink of water.
Well, it almost seems impossible that he would get that far away anyway. No more time than between the time that his brother went down to the creek and then turned around and went back to him.
Right, and they were only 10 feet.
You wouldn't think so anyway.
Right, and when I put in the link in the reference, you guys can see the area and everything else of where they were at, where Bobby was standing and everything else. It makes you wonder. But people, like I said, they were looking everywhere. There was no sign of anything. There was no prints. There was no nothing. People talked about the possibility of a bear or a cougar taking Bobby. But then, there would be tracks or signs of a struggle. Because if they were only away from him by 10 feet in 2 to 3 minutes, they would have heard him scream. Well, I guess if I don't mean to say this because it's awful, but, cougars do tend to go for the neck or whatever. But they would have heard a struggle or a noise of some site or saw something. Do you know what I mean? And besides that, I think that if the mother and the brother were only 10 feet away, they would have heard Bobby's screams. And the Holter even mentioned at one point to the papers that he didn't rule out the improbability or the possibility that maybe even an eagle could have picked up the young 30-pound boy. Because there are some eagles that do get over 5 feet wingspan, and they're ginormous. I mean, I've seen them up on our property, and they can pick up a lot of things, you know what I mean? So,
well, they get big enough, they could carry I don't know about a 30-pound boy, but they could carry a young child away.
Yeah, but some say, the boy could have been kidnapped. But to me, and also these people are thinking, there's no way no other people or cars in that area when Bobby disappeared because they're up a forestry road. And this forestry road I have as examples more cleared out than, it's more flat and nice to travel up than the one they were on. It was all bumpy and, just not a good thing to be driving a car through. And let alone they would have heard, they would have saw somebody would have saw something, somebody taking a boy and speeding off this dirt forest road without being, seen or heard by both her and her boys. They would have heard something too. They would have heard the car or anything. And besides, it's like I said, there was trees down and a lot of stuff. So, it doesn't make sense like a person would have kidnapped him right there. Somebody would have heard something. As far as a person, criminal type of possibility, what I'm trying to say?
Right. It just seems like no matter what, if it was an animal or a person, somebody would have at least heard something.
Right. Now, like I said, I'm going to post the photo of where he disappeared at, but they did believe that maybe they didn't believe that he drowned in the lake, being that the lake was so far away from where they were at, and there were several papers that stated that there were several hundreds of people a day participating in a 9-day search that drew thousands of volunteers to the remote area where Bobby vanished. But each day, it left everyone baffled. They had officials searching. The official search ended Sunday, August 11th, and Bobby's family ended up returning home to try and, take each day as it kind of came. You know what I mean? Because it
Must have
couldn't
been
stay
agony.
there. Well, it is. Every moment's agony, and even though the official search was called off, there were still 20 to 30 people who were still searching that area daily for a long time for Bobby. Now, like I said before, Howard worked for the delivery bread company, and at times his business route would bring him through the Stevens County, and he would actually stop and speak with the Sheriff Holter and actually have lunch with him at times, still hoping that they would find his son, And then later on, Howard became a state park ranger at the Riverside State Park, where he ended up retiring after a few years. Now, Howard died in 1999 at the age of 81, and Edna died at the age of 74 in December of 1998, which was, basically 6 months prior before Howard. But it was mentioned in the article I read online by some of the other brothers that their parents never ever camped at Deep Lake again after Bobby disappeared. But it was said that they remained avid campers over the years. They just never went back there, which I could kind of understand.
I understand it. I don't blame them.
And let's see what else they said. They said that Sheriff Dutch Holter, the guy who kind of led the search for Bobby, he stated that it was a strange disappearance of the child, but it was said that he never gave up hope trying to find young Bobby, and neither did Bobby's family. And I guess like a few years after, they did find some skeleton remains of a young child, but it turned out to be that from like an old Native American burial ground, and it wasn't Bobby's at all. So I can only imagine, when you stumble across that and then you think like, oh, they finally found my family member, and then it turns out not to be. It's just crushing as well. But even though it's been like a 54-year-old case, it's still an open cold case. So if there's like anyone out there that might have any clues or information pertaining to what happened to Bobby, you guys can contact the Stephen County Sheriff's Office, and I will be posting, like I said, all the newspaper article links and everything in a reference tonight after the show. But the thing is that I find interesting on this case, and it's weird, and also I have to say, like, the Deep Lake Resort that they were at the time is no longer there. It was shut down a while ago, but the area is still pretty much similar to the way it was when he disappeared.
I imagine they still get hikers and such in there, though.
Well, no, but there's still people who go camping there, and there's a few more houses and things like that. But the thing that I found interesting is it's not like, there were other people camping there. They would have heard commotion. They would have saw somebody running with a child out of the forestry road, hopping in the car and taking off, if somebody chose that mode to head back towards the camping area. You know what I mean? And of course, like I said, the dad and his brother were out in that direction towards the lake. They would have probably have noticed him, or like I said, the mom and the two brothers, they were right there with him. They only stepped right off the road to walk down the hill a little bit to check out the small waterfall with the creek, and he was only, like, what did I say, 10 feet away? And they were only away from him for 2 to 3 minutes. Now, I understand that a kid wanders. So, maybe it's a possibility that he wandered off into the brush, but he didn't even want to leave the road in the first place because he was barefoot and only had swim trunks on. And he stated his case to the family.
I understand a 4-year-old can get away from you fast.
Yes.
But it just seems to me that 3 or 4 minutes, he still would have been in earshot and would have heard his name and would have called out.
Yep, and his other brother didn't even stay down with, was it, I said Jimmy? Yeah, Jimmy didn't even stay down with him. He turned around and went back to his brother, and his brother was already gone. Now, if he did happen to wander off with all the people who were searching for him, like, okay, because there's a lot of foliage, and you got down trees, and maybe he slipped into a hole and under a tree or whatever, the dogs would have picked up on his scent. So they would have found something. And I would think if an animal, because when a bear comes out, because we have bears up at our farm, and they're pretty loud, okay, when they yell at you to tell you to, like, get out of, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a stand-up. I don't think a bear would have just came in and swooped him. And I don't know, maybe a bird, okay, I'm not saying this, but, okay, there's surmising this in the paper, saying, like, possibly a large bird picked him up, and that's why his scent was 4.5 miles away, and then it just stopped right there. Or, I don't know. This is the one, when I was reading it, and like I said, I'm going to put all the newspaper articles in there for you guys to continue to read more in depth of it. It's just something that doesn't make sense. I don't believe that the family had anything to do with this at all. You know what I mean? I think that something...
I was going to ask that if there was anything in there that you read that where the parents, or the mother anyway, came under suspicion.
Nope. There was nothing, and everything basically is like, they thought that he probably walked off and wandered off. They thought he might have walked up the trail and came back. There's just so many things that don't add up as far as why they didn't, why did his scent only go so far and just vanish? Because it's not like it went down into the campsite and then vanished, like, oh, I put him in the car and drove off. It's like it went up into worse rugged area of the trail. I mean, and like I said, I'll throw this photo up again of the example of the forestry road, but it was a lot more
I cannot imagine anything more agonizing than your child disappearing, and then you spend your life and even searching for them and even dying, not even knowing what happened.
Right. Well, his brothers are still alive, and we like to do these things because you never know. There might be somebody out there who does know something and can bring a closure to this, or, or saw something, or, know something. But then this makes you wonder, like, did something pick him up while he was out in the woods? But it have to be so quick. Like, maybe he did walk up a little bit and then encounter something, because this is just one of those things that stumped me, that they had absolutely, with all that many people searching, and they found absolutely no footprints, no evidence except for the dog went up this exact same trail a couple of times, and it just stopped dead in the track, and it just was deeper into the woods. So and there's no blood, there was no screaming, there was no animal evidence at this area or anything. And they went and they dug under all these trees and underbrushes, and they were looking for holes. They were in the abandoned mines. They checked out the creek, they checked out the lake, which was really far away. It's like he vanished into thin air is what happened. And this is like one of those cases where we're talking about, where there's just these strange disappearances in these and he wasn't exactly in the national forest, but they were right next to it. Yeah, it's all wooded, and they've mountainous areas and everything else. So this is one of those cases, when I was reading it, it just made me super sad.
It's so sad. It is. It's just so sad. But it just
doesn't make sense. And, they were right there, not even 10, 12 feet away. And
he could have even he could have wandered off, and because apparently if the bloodhound tracked him so far, of course I was going to say he could have fell in a hole somewhere, but it just seems to me that they would have found something like that.
Well, right, the dog would have tracked the scent into like a sinkhole or whatever, right? Because sometimes because sometimes trees and leaves and all this stuff can fall on the ground and cover up a hole that you don't even see. And next thing you're down or whatever, and he could have got knocked out. Is a possibility. But I think if the dogs hit his scent and a few, like, what did I say, 2 or 3 different times up the same trail and then just stopped there.
At the exact same spot.
Yeah, I think they would have found or something, you know. But when they were out there and cleaning some of the area, like I said, they did come across one skeleton remain, but it wasn't Bobby's, and they said it was that of Native American burial ground there. But this is just one of those things that I find very strange, and like I said, I'm putting it in the newspaper articles and everything for you guys to read even deeper than what we're going to say tonight, because we're trying to cover a lot other cases tonight too. But it doesn't make sense.
It's just a sad case.
No, it's weird. It doesn't make sense. And it makes me wonder if something grabbed him, really, you know?
Yeah.
But if anybody knows any information, you know, we'll have the phone numbers and the links where you guys can contact and help this family bring closure. So, I don't know, you want to go on to your next one?
Yes. Mine is on Jeff Zoltowski, and this happened in Molokai, Hawaii. Now, since this happened in Hawaii, I'm afraid to say I'm going to be butchering some of these words. But in March of 1993, Jeff Zoltowski was visiting Hawaii. Now, on the 21st, he called his dad. Now, when I almost passed this story up, but the more I got to reading it, the more this story just pissed me off. And you're going to find out why here in a few minutes. But on the 21st of March, he called his dad, Ron, and told him he was going to catch a plane to Molokai to hike and camp for a couple of weeks and not to worry if he didn't hear from him for a while. Now, for the first couple of weeks, of course, his dad thought nothing of it, you know, when he didn't hear from Jeff because of the phone call. But after the 3rd week, he started to worry because at one point he thought maybe his son might have met a girl and, as he put it, fell in love. But a 4th week went by, and now he was really becoming worried, and he tried to track down his son. Now, Molokai is the 5th largest island that makes up the Hawaiian Islands, and it's approximately 38 miles long by 10 miles wide. It's east of Oahu, and it's separated by a 25-mile channel. Now, Molokai Ranch occupies a lot of the island for pineapple production and cattle ranching, and it is also known for tourism. And on the north end, there is a settlement there that was established in 1866 to quarantine people with leprosy. And today it's a tourist attraction and a museum. Anyway, Mr. Zoltowski eventually contacted the Maui police and learned that on May 2nd of 93, a missing person report was filed on Jeff. And he also found out that Jeff was last seen alive on March 31st. And this was when a chartered helicopter carrying a state worker into the Walu Valley landed just feet from him. So Mr. Zoltowski found the 2 men and he interviewed them. And according to them, Jeff had come up to them and asked to be flown out of the valley. He said his feet were blistered and bleeding, and the men said that they assessed Jeff's situation and decided it was not life-threatening, so they denied his request. And the pilot did offer to take a 60-pound backpack, and he also offered to send a charter helicopter back for Jeff, but the fee would be $650 an hour. Now, Jeff did give the pilot his backpack, but he turned down the offer for the charter. So Mr. Zoltowski surmised that his son would not have any money anywhere near $650 on him, so he probably hiked out.
Well, yeah, who's carrying that kind of money when you're out hiking for the day or two, or when you're camping? You know, he might have kept it at, you know, in the bank or at the hotel or whatever.
Probably had a couple hundred on him, but that would be about it, yeah. You would think. Well, they also told Mr. Zoltowski that it was a 14-mile hike and a 5,000-foot elevation, and anyone in good shape could hike it in 10 to 12 hours. Now remember, Jeff's feet had blisters and were bleeding. Anyway, Jeff's backpack was flown back and left at the Department of Land, I can't remember it, DLNR base yard, where it sat for 41 days. 41 days before the workers made any attempt to contact the police to let them know that the owner never came for it. Now you know why the story ticked me off.
Well, there are some parts of it that, I mean, the helicopter people alone make me upset. Like, where's your human decency to another human who's suffering? Even if he doesn't have a broken leg, he was asking.
He didn't have
help.
$650 on him, so he's not going to fly him out of there. That's just unconscionable. Plus, there was a rich guy in the helicopter. So anyway, Mr. Zoltowski said he wished somebody had called him to tell him of his son's situation, but I am guessing that no one really knew. Jeff could not call anyone because cell phones really were not common then, and the mobile phones that did exist only had a limited range. But still, the pilot and his passenger could have said something or even tried to check to see if Jeff made it back. And you would think the DLNR workers or even the police would have gone through the backpack looking for some sort of ID with an address. And instead, Mr. Zoltowski had to go from Detroit to Hawaii to look for his son. So he went in May, and he spent 35 days there and approximately $40,000 out of his own pocket to try to find his son. And he even chartered one of those helicopters that cost $650 an hour, to fly around the island and look. But sadly, he found nothing. And over the years, Ron Zoltowski never gave up on finding his son. Mm-hmm. He, excuse me, he flew to Hawaii 2 or 3 times, but each time, he came back empty-handed, and I'm sure his heart was broken as well.
Well, here's the thing when, because we knew later on what each other's cases we were doing and stuff, and I kind of looked in, because you can hop on Google Map and kind of look in the area, and that's not like the easiest place to walk through. They do have trails and stuff, but some of those trails sections, especially in Hawaii, it's really... I
know, no bigger than that island is. It's a pretty wild island. It's...
And a volcanoist, and you can
fall into... Well, those islands were formed by volcanoes.
Yeah, and you could fall into any of the volcano, what do they call them, vent shafts, or I don't know what the term is, but I know somebody out there knows it. But he could have slipped into something, and even if he was climbing up over the mountainous area, it's like volcanoish rock. It's just gonna break and stuff.
Yeah.
And so,
not to mention what it's going to do to his feet. What it already did to his feet. His feet were blistered. They were bleeding. I can only imagine what kind of shape his feet would be in trying to walk back.
And of course, they took like all his gear, so he didn't have anything to help him survive through the night. But right. When I was kind of looking through this stuff after some of the places you told me you were going to read about tonight, and I was kind of blown away with how many people die or disappear in Hawaii when they're on these trails.
I know.
And there's so many that people that just fall to their death. Of course, they found out, they know where they went, but there's so many who just are missing and gone too. And I was like, I'm not going. See, there's another reason why I'm not going to Hawaii. I don't want to be stuck in the island.
It's expensive to live there.
Volcano-ish. Well, yeah, it's expensive, although it's pretty. It's not for me. But after reading all the different cases of people who are dying on these trails or disappearing, it's scary,
Yeah.
Sorry, that caught my attention when you were talking about this. So.
No problem. Mr. Zoltowski hired an artist to work up pictures of what his son would look like in age-progressive drawings. And he worked the talk show circuit to shows like, at the time, Sally Jesse Raphael, and even Oprah, among others. Hoping that someone either saw something or knew something and would call the police or call himself with the new lead. And he would stay close to home, in his phone and computer, hoping for a phone call or even an email. A psychic even contacted him one time and told him his son was still alive. But he knew the odds of that were a long shot, but, he still held out hope.
What did psychic say? Do you know?
That he was still alive. That's all it said.
Well, alive in the wilderness or alive in one of the...
Just that he was still alive. The Honolulu police detective, Joseph Self, worked in the missing persons department, and he was the one who worked the Jeff Zoltowski case. But he said that at the time that he believed that Jeff was deceased. He stated, though, that anything was possible and Jeff could still be out there, but the chances of that were very remote. Now, in 2001, a woman who lived in the Kuakini area by the name of Odetta Stevens was watching the news, and there was a segment about Jeff along with these photographs. Now, she recognized him as a man she saw hanging around the Institute for Human Services, which is a homeless shelter. And she immediately called the police and reported that. She also called Jeff's parents, and she even later met with them. But she stated that the man had a scar under his left eye, and he had a contusion on his cheek, and that he had beautiful teeth. She stated that it looked as if someone whacked him in the head. Now, Detective Self did follow up on Odetta's information and had tracked this man to a video arcade on Hotel Street. But there, the trail went cold. It was as if he had just disappeared. Now, the article that I got the story from was written in the Honolulu Advisor in like July of 2006. And Jeff's mother died in November of 2005. Mr. Zoltowski and her had been, at the time Jeff disappeared, they had been divorced for something like 20 years. But he said that her greatest fear was dying before she knew what happened to her son, and that is exactly what happened. Now, I don't know if Ron Zoltowski or Detective Self are still alive, or even Odetta Stevens. I do know that Ron Zoltowski never gave up trying to find his son. It's been 25 years, and Jeff or his body have never been found, and there was so much that could have been done at the time that maybe could have kept his parents from the horrors of going through life not knowing what happened to Jeff. And it had to be so agonizing for them. I couldn't help but feel for them. The pilot and his passenger could have had a little compassion in flying back to the DLNR base. The passenger, who was wealthy, could have paid the $650 fee for him.
I just don't understand the human compassion. It's not like he was like walking down the street and was like, "Hey, can you give me a ride to up the?" You know what I mean?
I know he was out in the middle of nowhere, and he was practically begging for help. I mean, he went up to this pilot and this guy, and he showed him his feet, you know, and they said, well, that's not life-threatening, you know. And the workers at the DLNR base, they could have reported him missing a lot sooner instead of waiting 41 days. That backpack sat there for 41 days before anybody decided, well, this guy's not coming back, we better make a missing persons report.
But the thing, and the picture in here is a photo of the valley area, kind of showing how it is. You know what I mean? But it's not showing. You can also Google the, how do you say that name? Wahaului Valley or whatever. But there's, you know, and you can see photos of the different trails that they kind of have. They have waterfalls in that area. They have a lot of places you can hit there. Really,
I know it's a wild area.
But they're not like a sidewalk either. So I could see why, you know, he, for as long as, like you said, he was out there, he could have gotten turned about, hurt, exhausted. I just don't understand why they didn't help him out. I mean, that's the thing that throws me off. And why I say, like, well, we'll help you out, we'll just take your backpack, but we'll, you know, we'll charge you $650
to fly you back.
Or why not why didn't they contact the, I don't know, what do you call them, the National Park Service people there and say, hey, there's an injured hiker out there in this set area, can you guys go help him? Why didn't they even do that? Or did you say anything about that? Because I can't remember, because you said a lot of information.
They didn't. They, like I said, the helicopter pilot, I don't even know if the helicopter pilot, he said anything before Mr. Zoltowski tracked him down. These were people that Mr. Zoltowski had to track down. They didn't go looking for him. He had to go looking for them. The people at the DLNR base.
Mm-hmm.
The backpack sat there for 41 days.
Yeah, why didn't they
just sat there for 41 days? You know what? After a couple days, they should have known that something was wrong, and they should have contacted the police or the Park Service then. Right. And they didn't do it. They did nothing until May 1st.
Right, and I can understand why the dad took his time and whatever, because the son loved traveling. He had traveled many places before, and as far as the photo goes, I don't know if that's the last photo of him, but from a Find the Missing website, we're going to put in our references so you guys can go check it there. There's a whole bunch of photos, some of them him standing with some of the park rangers and other stuff, and some when he's a little younger with a cleaner face, different views and everything, so you guys can see more photos of him.
There's some pictures in there somewhere where the artist did an age progression on him. And to this day, Jeff Zoltowski is still a missing person, and as far as I know, his case is still open.
Right. And so they told him to, like, if you go this way, it'll bring you down to the valley shorter to get help. But knowing that he was injured, they should have told him, hey, take some of your items out of your backpack in case. Still a 10-hour hike is not in this type of environment.
A 10 to a 12-hour hike in that kind of environment is not, when you're injured,
yeah,
and probably could barely walk, is not a 10 to 12-hour hike. You know, that might be a 24-hour hike. It might be a little bit longer, but it's not a 41-day hike.
Is his dad still alive, did you say?
I don't know if his dad is still alive or not.
Yeah, this is another one of those.
I do know that his mother died in 2005.
You know, there's a few cases we've read where there's people who come across these people who are needing help or whatever, and they turn them down, and next thing you know, these people are never seen again either. So it's just like, you know, it makes you wonder, like, those people who were the helicopter guy or the guys that were riding the helicopter, did they ever sit back and remember this moment thinking, like, what if I just would have said something or did something?
Well, you would think, but apparently neither one of them had a conscience. You know, I mean, it does make you wonder. I just, personally, I hope that they had trouble sleeping for the rest of their lives. This, to me, was just unconscionable.
It could have been completely...
It could have been completely avoided.
Yep.
They could have even notified the Park Service so they could send out someone to look for this guy.
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't understand why they didn't even... They had a radio right there. They could have radioed the
DLNR.
Yeah. Why didn't
nothing.
They radio for him aid? Oh, this is... There's so
I think
much
that's good for Department of Land National Reserve or something like that. But they did nothing. They didn't even send out a search party for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody did anything. And that's a shame. The only person that, if you can call it doing anything, was this detective self, but by the time he got it, there wasn't a whole lot he could do.
Man. Well,
and I didn't see anything where he even interviewed. Of course, I'm sure he did. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure he may have interviewed the pilot and the passenger, you know, and the passenger was a state worker. It just seems to me that, you know, he flew the guy's 60-pound backpack out of this place. It just seems to me that he would have checked to see if Jeff showed up or not to get his backpack. And I got a feeling since the backpack sat there 41 days that he didn't do it. And this is a charter service that works that island.
It just kind of, you know, and even though you let, nowadays we have cell phone pings and stuff, it's still pinging a wide area in national parks and forests.
DLNR stands for Department of Land and Natural Resources. Thank you, Richard.
Right. But even nowadays, if people have cell phone and like this technology, it's not going to help you get saved either, because it'll ping a wide area. And if you're in a dead zone, your phone's not going to ping your last.
Well, back then, cell phones were not as common as they are now. And like I said, the phones that they did have did not have much of a range on them.
Right. This is another one.
So he was probably in a, for the type of phones, mobile phones that they did have, he was probably in a dead zone on the whole island.
Yeah. See, I don't have it in me to look somebody dead in the face who's suffering or hurting. Sorry, can't help you unless you pay me. That's just not in me. And
I know, I can't. That's not in me either.
Know that there's people out there that are that empty and soulless, you know.
Yeah.
Like, what if that was their brother, or their, or their son, God forbid.
Right.
I feel bad for this family, and I feel bad for Jeffrey, but I don't think he's still around, to be honest with you. I honestly don't think he is either. He was trying to take this shortcut that he didn't really know the area of that different path that they were sending him on. He was trusting this pilot's direction. He was hurting. He could have been a lot worse off than that, because if he did slip or something, he could have hit his head. Just because you don't see a major injury doesn't mean that he didn't have something else going on inside him at the time, too. It's just a sad case, and this is just another one where, it could have been avoided, and also, nobody is probably ever going to know what happened to him. It's just one of those sad,
that's true,
awful ones. Do you want to take like a quick 3-minute break so I can?
Yes, let's take a quick break before we go into the rest.
Yeah, BBJ, or I can't even say it. They said, why didn't they charge those people? I mean, you think that they would have, could have had some type of liability for the fact of him missing. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. Maybe back then they probably didn't really have anything to charge them with.
Yeah.
And like I said, the passenger was wealthy.
Well, wealthy or not doesn't, there's wealthy people there.
A wealthy state worker, by the way.
Well, there's wealthy people that still have compassion. That you could be rich or poor, you could still have a soul. You know what I mean? Obviously, this guy sold his. This person sold theirs for money. So, okay, we're going to be back in like 2 minutes. I'm going to drink a water. And then we have a couple more cases to talk about. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you for sharing. Stick with us, and we'll be back with the other 2 cases here shortly. Welcome back to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. I'm your host, Raven. Tonight's topic is Mysterious Disappearances in National State Parks and Forests. This is our second show we've done on this topic, and just kind of an eye-opener every time we do a show like this, because of all the missing. There's so many, and it's really hard to pick, because, you want to read them all. And hoping that, hopefully, someone listens now live or later on with the podcast that could possibly know information to help the family or help these people get home or anything. But this is definitely another one where we're just going to constantly be doing reoccurring things. And like we said, when our first couple of years ago when we did our first show, there wasn't a lot that the national parks were putting information up on their websites. But at least now they have a couple links where they are listing some of their cold cases. There's some cases of missing people or accidents, and it's not all of them, but there's a couple up there, so that's a start. You know what I mean? But with the millions and millions of people who go into these areas and not really prepared, and even prepared people still have accidents or still disappear. But it's these ones that just baffle me, especially with the Bobby earlier. He was just right there.
Or that Jeff Zoltowski. He was actually an experienced hiker.
Yeah, he's
still witnessing.
Yeah. I think a lot of it could have been due to his injuries. I think something may have possibly happened in that area because it wasn't, it's not like a sidewalked hike or anything. And he was injured. I just think those people should have been somewhat a little bit liable. The fact that they knew he was hurting, they should have called for help. Isn't there like laws where like if you see somebody that needs help and you don't call 911 that you can get in trouble, like car accidents or anything else? Isn't there like some
states have that. This state has that. If you see someone like a car wreck, especially a really bad one, or someone in distress, physically in distress or whatever, to call 911, hurt, whatever. It is, you don't have to try to treat them, because for one thing, this state is so crazy, but you have to at least call 911 to get them some help.
Right. And like Renee said,
now if you're a doctor or a nurse and somebody knows there's a doctor or a nurse there, then they end up getting sued.
Yeah, if you refuse to help too, you can get in trouble. But like Renee said, you should, some of these places, although they're really beautiful and awesome to go explore, even if you're an experienced hiker, you shouldn't really go hiking by yourself.
Right. And I agree with that.
And a lot of people do. And you know what? I do it too sometimes. I go out in our woods, all off on my own, blueberry picking and everything else. And I do bring some stuff. But you know what? I don't always bring every survival thing I probably should. Because I figure like, I'm going to be out here for 30 minutes or whatever. And something could happen. Because we do have wildlife. I do bring a gun with me just to kind of scare off anything. If something does happen, or if I do get attacked, it gives me a chance to try to escape.
Well,
but you go out sometimes too. But when it's on your own land, you don't think so much. But it is wilderness. We're out.
No, you don't.
My wilderness is just like in this photo down here, except for we don't have a mountain, but we have trees like that, and you're out and nowhere.
So we have bluffs and stuff around here, and I used to go off into the woods by myself too. I knew our property, and I knew it like the back of my hand. But there's always an accident, I could have easily fallen off of one of those cliffs, or down a hole or whatever.
Or it came across, because we can come across bears or wolves too. We have timber wolves that live on our property is a part of their territory, as well as we have a Canadian lynx, and we have cougars running around because they released them.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you releasing cougars out around here? But it can happen, and I've been, I shouldn't probably go out in the woods by myself, but I do, because you think like, I already know kind of the area, I know my abilities, but you know what, the stuff can happen.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens. You're like, I'll be fine, but something can happen, and it does happen to millions of people, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Are you done with?
Yeah, let's go on to our next story.
Okay.
Or your next story, I should say.
Well, it's not really a story. It's a missing case.
Report. Yeah.
Yeah. But this one I came across again when I was kind of digging about through because a lot of times, you know, me and Spooky just like reading stuff, or we just research kind of like you guys do, and we have interest in a lot of things. Like me and her have interest in cold case shows. We like to watch different shows on TV, like Killing Fields or Cold
Case.
Cold Justice. And other things.
Cold Justice.
Yeah, and things like that. But they're a little bit different because that's more of like city crimes or whatever. This is where people are just vanishing without a trace and nobody knows what happened to them. But when I was kind of Googling about, and I was typing in missing people and Google News, and there was like so many things that were coming across, and I came across this one. Her name was Susan Seymour Adams, and she basically, her and her husband are from Texas, and it was like in the end of September of the 1990s when Tom and Susan Adams from Austin, Texas, decided that they were going to go on this hunting camping trip deep in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, up by like the Montana-Idaho border with their, and of course they weren't going by themselves. They actually contacted an outfitter group, you know, where they have special hunting guides who know a lot of the area. They do have their training of where to go hunting and all stuff, you know. And the hunting outfitter group was called the Iron Horse Outfitters, I believe. Now, Tom and Susan, like I said, at the end of September, they made their way to the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness area, which kind of lies between the borders of like 4 national forests, which is huge then, you know what I mean? It has like 1.3 million acres is what I found out, which makes up, this area makes up the 3rd largest wilderness in the whole lower 48. So this place is just rugged forestry country, you know, and they have tons of lakes and rivers, and you know the water up there is like so blue, like you don't want to touch it.
And cold.
Well, yeah, because you know I went up to Montana, up in Rollins area, and they have this one lake. We like, okay, see, like me and my boyfriend at the time, we were stupid, we were young. We're like, hey, let's move off to Montana. We threw stuff in our, and I'll get back to Susan in a second, but as example, we threw our camping stuff, like we went to the store and like, hey, we'll buy all this stuff, throw it in the trunk, and we took off like we're moving to Montana, right? And we were ill prepared. We didn't know the area. We went up on these little trails and into the mountains and, you know, set up camp. And at one point, my boyfriend almost slid off the mountain because these are really tiny footpaths, you know what I mean? And we thought, yeah, we're going to do this. We wanted to have that adventure. We wanted to have, you know, travel here and do all this stuff too. But, you know, it's quite easy, you know, for something to happen. And, you know, even though we had equipment, and we talked to the DNR guy and asked him for a map or whatever, and they told us, well, be careful of the cats and the bears or whatever, to make sure you put your food up in the tree. And they questioned us a lot, and, you know, we didn't have everything that they said, and they said, well, we don't advise you really going that far out, but we didn't listen anyway, and we went. So maybe some of these cases, not her, but other cases of people we've read on the internet, they could have been as ignorant as we were at the time. I'm not that ignorant now when it comes to that, but of course I was a lot younger, you know what I mean? And when you're younger, right, you think you're invincible. But with
exactly.
But with this rugged area, because this photo actually kind of reminded of my incident when I went, but you know, this place it's full of rivers and lakes, and you have your low valleys, and you got tons of different kinds of wildlife. You know, you have your deer, you got your moose, you got elk, bear, lions, all that. Not like African lions, but you know what I mean. You got wolves and
don't forget the bighorn sheep.
Exactly. A lot of people go hunting for that, but most of this area, it's never touched by humans. And there's like, I think whatever, it was like over 1,800 miles of trails that, you know, kind of, and these trails aren't like, you know, city park trails, but these thin, worn paths, like an animal-looking trail, they kind of like wind through this area, and they're unmaintained, they're rugged, you know, you're basically traveling this area by foot or at times with stock, which, you know, is like those special horses or mules, you know what I mean? Which,
yeah.
it's at best even challenging to bring those type of animals into this area. But this area draws in many hunters because of the population of the wildlife there. And just because it is 1.3 million acres of national untouched forests, so it's prime property basically for an adventure. But this area, like I said, it draws in a lot of people, so of course it drew in Tom and Susan. Now they spent several months preparing and planning for their trip. They both had been camping and hunting in this area before, so it's not like their first time going in here with outfitters, professional guides, But the Adams were in, like I said, the Battle Lake area of the Salway Wilderness around Saturday, September 22nd. And from what I was reading, like different websites and different articles that I kind of came across, it stated that they were actually enjoying their time there. And it was by, I think, like the 9th day is when things kind of went south. It was like Saturday, September 29th, Tom, her husband, he went out on like a little overnight hunt with a couple of the hunting guides, because they had like this main camp set up where you have like your cook and because when you get an outfitter, they bring their supplies, they bring their big tent, they got their own cook type of stuff, you can pay for that kind of stuff. So they had this like one section where they had their main stuff, but of course they could go off with a guide to try to stay off an area to try to get a good place to hunt. You know what I mean? I'm trying to watch my words not to offend some people who don't like hunting or killing, you know what I mean? But so of course he stayed out an overnight, so they have their small gear for that, and he was with the hunting guides. And it was early Sunday morning that Susan decided that she would do a little bird watching, because she stayed at the main camp. So it was somewhere around 9 a.m. when Susan told the camp cook what her kind of plans were, and that she was just going to head over to this nearby meadow, which wasn't too far off from their campsite. So at the time, I guess Susan was just wearing like a camo clothing, and she grabbed her camera, and they said she had like a bird book with her, and she had a pair of binoculars, and she just set off on her own down the little trail towards that meadow nearby. Well, sad thing is she didn't bring with her any of her survivor gear. She didn't bring any food. She didn't bring any extra heavy clothing, because she just thought, like how we do, we go out in the woods, we're going to pick berries, we don't
She
need
probably hadn't planned on being gone very long.
Well, no, it was just right down the way. It wasn't that, it was a little ways off, but it wasn't that far off where she's going to be hiking miles and miles, So she figured she was just going to go hang out for a little while, check out the birds, see what she can see, and enjoy nature for what it is, and come back. Well, that was the last time that anyone's seen or spoke with Susan Seymour Adams, as far as we know, ever again. Was the last time was when she told that camp cook, hey, I'm going to go right this way. Well, Tom and several of the others, they set out to look for Susan all Sunday and Monday. Now, Susan's husband, Tom, in the Iron Horse Outfitters, the guides, they did find and follow Susan, because when they were out there, they ended up tracking and finding her tracks. Because these hunting guides, they got to have good trackers, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because that's their profession. They know how to track
animals.
Well,
that's part of that.
Stuff.
Right. That's part of their job.
Right. So of course, her husband went out, and a bunch of the guides that go out there looking for her. They followed her tracks, and they said that she had left the trail about a mile from camp. But from what I was reading, is they followed them, and then all of a sudden, poof, gone. No, they couldn't find anything else. They followed her all the way up to one point, and then she just disappeared. So either she just poof disappeared from there, or they lost the tracks. Which these guys are highly professional hunters and trackers, and they've been in this area for many, many, many years. So they know how to do this. They know how to track. And humans, like I said, they're worse than animals. We leave grass and everything pounded down. It's like, it's pretty easy to trail a human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like a deer, just clumsy and you know, it's easy to track.
We always leave some sign of where we've been.
Exactly. And I mean, I know there's probably better ways of explaining this, but I'm trying to like get all this information out tonight for the show. But it just, they should have found something all up to the point, but she just disappeared. But from what I read on the net was that her tracks just stopped there, but it started to snow. This is the messed up thing, okay? Her horse? Oh, she didn't take... Oh, somebody asked if her horse was ever found. The horse was still back. The horses or whatever they used were back at camp. She just went for a walk down a ways to the open meadow that wasn't far from camp. So she went with her own...
She was on foot.
Foot on her own means, you know, with her camera, her bird book, and her binoculars. And she was just wearing basic, you know, camo clothing for back then. And, but like I said, that Monday, this is when it started to suck because it started to snow early that Monday morning, which ended up covering any and all tracks for good of Susan's. So come Tuesday is when, like the local Grangeville and this Ravalli County or whatever, the Mounties, you know, they arrived to help and search for Susan. So so that was on Tuesday that I was reading. There was a couple people came out to try to help, but they weren't having any much luck because of the snow, and they weren't finding any evidence, you know, or clothing or anything or blood or whatever. And so like on Wednesday, you know, they had 20 searchers that had covered, from what I was reading, over a 3-mile radius from around the camp. And there was no signs of or from Susan at all. Now, people did say that they had noticed a cougar and or a bear. Well, not and or. They saw them both at some point. They had noticed a cougar and a bear in the search area. But, of course, you're going to find that in this wilderness. I mean, it's their house. You know what I mean? So they thought, well, maybe she may have come across a big cat or a bear. But they didn't find any evidence of that. You know what I mean? But Wednesday and Thursday, the weather began, like, deteriorating. It had, like, tons of blowing snow. They had, like, poor visibility. And it was making it hard to just locate her. And, of course, she was underdressed for this. Because all her other stuff was in camp. She just went out on a nice sunny day. And, of course, in the mountains, you know how the weather can change on you like that. You know?
Yes, it can.
So by that Wednesday afternoon, from what I was reading, there was already about 3 inches of snow on the ground. They had more searchers from the Idaho. We're just back in our second show trying to. This is what happens when you're live. You're gonna hear mess ups, you know. But more searchers from the Idaho County Sheriff Department and the posse from the Valley County Search and Rescue Team. They had 2 dog teams from the Mountain West Rescue Dogs, and they also had Civil Air Patrol, and all these guys were continuing their search for Susan. Now 5 days had passed with no sign of Susan at all, and we come upon now when I was reading like October 5th, which would have been Thursday, and they said that there was already now 6 inches of snow on the ground by then, and it was still coming down. They had, you know, several foot patrols, they had trained canines, they had helicopters, they had airplanes searching day and night for Susan, you know, but I did read at one point, I think it was around this time, that there was an article that they said they had possibly found footprints for Susan, but they said this was 25 miles from where she disappeared. Like, that's a long ways to track from, you know, and it could happen.
I can't imagine a grown woman wandering 25 miles away from camp.
Well, she could have maybe possibly
gotten lost.
Well, the meadow was right down the ways, not that far from their camp, but maybe she hit her head and got disoriented. You can get disorientated in the wilderness, and I mean, it happened to me when we were in Wisconsin because we had other land that we used to camp on and stuff, and you'd go to ways in the woods and you can get turned about. It can happen, but I don't think that those footprints that they found were Susan's, that was 25 miles away from where she disappeared. But they also said that after investigating into it, they said that they were not from Susan at all, and that the officials from Montana and Idaho ended up calling off the search for Susan that Thursday, saying that nobody thought that she could still be alive, just because due to the conditions of the weather that was going on for a few days. So they just figured there's no way she's alive, and because they didn't want to put other people in danger and stuff, they called it off for safety reasons for the searchers. But me and you both know that there's people who survive for days and days and days in some hellish type of conditions and ended up making it out of certain places. You know, because we've seen shows and read.
There are people that live in those mountains in Montana. You ever watch that show, Mountain Men?
Yes, I have. But
you know,
but they also have a building. They also have all their stuff with her. She left all her stuff at camp. But there is a ways. She was, you know, it's not like her first time out hunting and in these areas and stuff. So I'm sure she was pretty much aware of, you know, going into pined areas, putting pine all around you, pine branches or whatever. So, but like I said, they called off that search that Thursday because they didn't want to, because of the condition of the snowing and everything that was going on. They didn't want to put other people in danger. And they said at this time, basically, were telling Tom and stuff, they're like, well, if the weather warms up and, you know, and the snow melted, they would resume their search for Susan. Well, of course, Susan's husband and the Iron Horse outfitter guide, Art Griffin, they kept up their search for Susan despite the weather. And even if the search party was called off, they kept going. Now, it was October 11th, the next Thursday, that 7 searchers from Idaho and that, what did I ever say? That
Ravalli
County set out to search for Susan again, because by then the snow broke, you know, the storms and snow, it calmed down, so they're like, okay, we'll go back out. And because the weather was in kind of like a better condition and the snow had melted somewhat in the area, so the search group had with them a 6-dog team, 5 from the Utah and 1 from, I don't know where the other one was from.
Coeur d'Alene.
Well, thanks. Spooky nose.
I know that. I know the name of that town. I've been there.
Well, you know some of the newspaper articles I was reading. But anyway,
yeah,
they had like
that's true.
6 dog teams, because we share our links. Like, hey, check this out. You know, but
yeah, we do.
They had 6 dog teams searching for them and stuff, and they planned on searching for Susan until bad weather hit again. But by that Saturday, it did hit again, because you're in the mountains. They ended up with several inches of snow. They had poor visibility, so they called it off again. But it had already been like several weeks since Susan disappeared, and she didn't have any survival gear with her. So, like, the Idaho, I don't know why I can't say Idaho tonight. It's like, I want to say weird, I'm just going to make up my own state, I guess. I don't know why I can't say it tonight. But anyway, the Idaho County Sheriff Randy Baldwin, he said that Friday afternoon that they were ending the search, and stating that, you know, they couldn't find anything, and that any continued searches would most likely, they would be looking for skeleton remains. You know, they're no longer going to be finding like a full body or her alive at all. Now, of course, Art Griffin, who I told you about, the guide from the outfitter, him and Susan's family and friends, they kept up their search for her, though, for a very long time. They paid over $10,000 just to search for her, and I'm sure more than what I came across. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sure.
But the search and rescue, they didn't return again until, from what I saw, you know, I think it was July of 1991. You know, that's when the Idaho County Sheriff Posse, along with 2 dogs and their handlers, searched for Susan, and they found nothing. Of course, you're not going to find anything by then in the wilderness, because if she did expire, you know,
right,
animals are going to come in. It's just a natural part of life, you know.
Right.
Now,
unfortunately, yes.
Now, Susan was 42 when she disappeared on September 30th of 1990. So this tells you how long people were kind of, like, her family was looking for her. You know what I mean? So, because she went missing on September 30th, and then they were still looking, you know, for days, and then called it off, looked again on October 11th. You know what I mean? Because you got September, now you're into October. And then it was called off completely until July of that summer. So, let's see. October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. You know, like 8 months. You know what I mean? And so, by that time, I highly doubt they would have found her or anything. You know what I mean? Maybe possibly a clothing or whatever. But, you know, the sheriff believes that Susan may have succumbed to injuries that she might have received when she was walking alone near Battle Lake, because that was the name of the lake in the area where they were hunting or whatever. Now, they do believe her remains are in that area, but they don't feel further searches would be productive or necessary, you know, by that time when they were in July. But this is one of those strange cases, again, where someone just up and vanished. Now, authorities did give Tom, her husband, and others in the hunting party polygraph tests to see, like, did something possibly take place, like a crime, you know what I mean? And they all passed.
I don't understand it. He was with witnesses. I mean...
No, but but listen, because they couldn't find anything at all, and whatever, they tested, you know, they gave everybody a polygraph test, because even if he was witnesses, they all could have been a part of a crime in these people's minds, but they all passed him with flying colors. There was no deception, there was no, you know, untruths or anything. She just disappeared, you know, so they were no longer considering any of those people suspects in her disappearances. Now, some say she might have been taken by a wild animal, but no one mentioned tracks of a predator near her footprints that were found that first time. Because remember how I said that her husband and the hunting guides, who are professional trackers, they found her track and they followed her up to a certain point, and then it just vanished. Now, of course, they kept circling the area thinking maybe we missed it, but they didn't find anything else. But while they were seeing that, they didn't see no predator tracks. They didn't see no bear tracks. They didn't see no cat tracks or, you know, what have you. They only found hers, and they followed them. And then, poof, they just stopped. They just disappeared. Now, supposedly, according to these websites online, you know, I can't say for sure because I'm not part of this family. I didn't know. I'm just reading all this information as best as we can dig up. But Susan's family contacted a psychic to help locate her. Now, true or not, I don't know. But they said that they had this vision of her falling off a cliff and hitting her head. Now, I tried to do a lot more digging, but I couldn't locate anything more recent on her or about her husband, Tom. But I did stumble across what I believe is her brother's obituary, and his name was a Robert Michael Rivermouth Mike Seymour, because they had Native American, you know what I mean? And her father was Charles Matt Seymour. And that's about all I could find, you know. I couldn't find any more about Tom or anything else because I was just, you know, trying to dig as best as we can in a couple of weeks to get all this information. But, you know, Susan is still missing. And if anyone has any, you know, information, I guess, that could possibly help solve this, you know, you can contact the Idaho authorities by the information on this missing person ad photo I have up. But we are going to have, like, all the the links for the newspaper articles, for the websites that we were reading, to the missing website that's up for these people with a lot more information where you can contact them personally right there. And also we have links up for that show a lot more photos than we have available for tonight that we can possibly show. But this is just one of those things that just baffle me, you know, because she wasn't that far off from camp, you know, and so she didn't pack all her stuff, but she didn't plan on being gone very long. But the fact that they found her tracks, they followed her up to like a mile away, and then it just vanished, it makes you wonder, You know, and there was no blood at the scene. There was no torn clothes. They didn't find her binoculars. They didn't find her book. They didn't find her camera.
I know. I was thinking of that too. I was going to ask that if there was anything mentioned about finding the binoculars, the camera, you know, those things that she took with her.
Yeah, because
so all of that disappeared with her. This woman left absolutely nothing behind.
Right, and it's super sad that this is happening to people, but these are one of those things where it doesn't make sense. It's weird, and you know, of course, that's what the police and the other guys were thinking, because they're like, well, let's polygraph all these guys, because how could there'd be nothing, you know? But that's
right.
What happens, and it's very strange because, you know, like we know, like I said before, that this is like the third largest wilderness in the lower 48. This area, the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, like I said, lies between 4 national forests, and it has like 1.3 million acres of, you know, rugged forest country. And like I said, you got the lakes, you got the rivers, you got the low valleys and mountains, and you got all this wildlife and stuff. But I'm thinking, like, if they tracked her up to a point and then and they found no predator, they found no blood, they found no clothing, they found nothing, it just, like, what happened to her? You know? And they would have found a hole or something in the area. And if she hit her head, you know, you think they would have...
Well, even if there was a cliff or, you know, or a bluff around the area, surely they would have checked below to see if she was there, you know, in case she had fallen off.
But she was heading to a...
These were expert people, you know. I mean, they were trackers, they were rescue people, and, you know, all sorts of things. But that outfitting
group
company, I mean, those people are trained for all different sorts of things.
They spent years.
You know, they don't hire just somebody off the street. These are people that's been doing this for years, practically their whole lives.
Yeah, that man, Art Griffin, the guide from the outfitter, Iron Horse Outfitter, he spent years looking for this woman. He did not give up, no matter what. And they stayed in awful weather and everything. So, I mean, he felt horrible that she just disappeared. And it didn't make sense. You know, he had, like, yeah. She has to be here. She has to be here. Just because of the area. And she was just going right down to a meadowish area. So it wasn't like she was climbing up the mountainside or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she didn't plan on doing any strenuous hiking or too far off. That's why she didn't bring all her gear with her. It's just one of those...
I know, she had not, it sounds like she had not planned on being gone long. She was going to go down, do little bird watching, then go back to camp.
Right. Because they're animals attack, and, you know, there is stuff left behind. You find the kill zones when they take down deer and everything else. They're tore apart. And I'm not saying this about a person, but I'm trying to say that there's evidence of struggles that occur. So with the ones that I did tonight with Bobby and with Susan, it just blows my mind. Like, it's like they just disappeared and vanished in a small... Of course, she went out... They let her be gone for a while, but as the day went on, they're like, well, she should be back by now, when her husband went on to find her. But it just blows my mind that they could track her, but they couldn't... There was nothing else around that, you know. But...
Oh.
Like I said, if you know, this is still up. If anybody knows any information that could help the family bring closure to this, you know, we'll have the links in our references tonight where you guys can go and read more in depth in what we're saying tonight and continue on with your own research. But do you want to go ahead and go into your next one, Spooky?
Okay. My next one. This one is also in Hawaii. I wasn't going to do this one either, but I don't like, you know, I like to give it a little bit of variety. But this one caught my attention. It's Daylenn Pau, I get P-A-U. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. On February 27th in 2017, this one's recent, 18-year-old Daylenn left his grandmother's house, and he told her he was going to go hiking up the Haiku Trail, which is known locally as the Stairway to Heaven. Now, his grandmother actually tried to talk him out of going by telling him that it was too dangerous and that she saw in the news that it was closed to the public. Well, he left his grandmother's house, said he was going to go hiking, and he boarded a bus. During that morning, he did end up on the trail. He took photos with his phone, and he posted them on social media. Now, at 11 a.m., he posted a photo that indicated he was on the trail. After this, the posting stopped, and Daylenn was never heard from again. Now, there was an intense search for Daylenn that involved the fire department, volunteers, drone operators, and even the United States Navy, but no trace of him had been found. And the search was stepped up a bit when a couple of hikers stated they heard someone yelling for help, but nothing was found. Now, unfortunately, after 5 days of searching with no results, search was called off. Now, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Haiku, Haiku Trail. It's all, like I said, it's also known as the Stairway to Heaven and the Haiku Stairs. Now, this is a very steep hiking trail on the island of Oahu. And it sits on top of a ridge with steep drops on both sides. And at the top is a radio station that was built in the 1940s by the United States Navy. Now, this station was built to send radio transmissions to the ships operating in the South Pacific during World War II, and it was classified as top secret at the time. So you got this radio station up there, and it had all kinds of antennas that stretched across this valley and across those mountains. This station, because of its location, it could receive signals all across the Pacific. Now, to access the station, I don't think I could have done this if I was stationed there, because in the beginning, to access the station, there was a ladder that was built. And you went up this ladder up the side of this mountain.
You know what?
Now,
I remember I was watching these YouTube videos where people were sneaking up and doing this, and in some of their videos you could actually see some of the old ladders still on parts of these areas. Oh yeah.
But later they did build wooden stairs for easier access. The radio station was decommissioned in the 1950s, but it was used as an Omega navigation system by the United States Coast Guard, and the wooden stairs were replaced with metal steps and ramps. As a matter of fact, it was 3,922 steps in all.
Really? I thought somebody said later on, okay, in the video, I guess it fell to them that they took 4,000 steps. But maybe it was 4,000 steps from where they entered in at illegally.
Could have been, but 3,922 steps, who cares if you call it 4,000?
But even in that elevation, I don't care how athletic you are, you're going to be freaking winded.
Yeah. Now, an ONS is a system that allowed ships and aircraft to determine their position by a low-frequency radio signal. But the system was used until 1997, when it was shut down in favor of the Global Positioning System, or the GPS. Now, in 1987, the trail was closed to the public, and to this day, public access is forbidden and against the law. But it seems that, jail time and fines up to $1,000 just do not seem to deter some hikers from using the trail. In fact, dozens of hikers use that trail every day.
There was a video of Obama going on that trail with his, guards and everybody else. I went because I was Googling it to see YouTube.
Well, if he was president at the time, it's not close. It wasn't close to him. 463 in 2015. 463 people were cited for being on that trail, and 11 were arrested. Now, personally, I do not know why anyone would want to climb those stairs. I wouldn't get a quarter of the way up, and I'd be crying to go home. Not to mention, if you've got the picture up, that trail is right on the top of that ridge.
Right. If you can,
I'm afraid of heights. There's just no way.
You can Google map this thing, and I think I'm going to put I think I do have the Google Map link for it, which you guys can click on it and it'll bring you right to the section area, and you can follow this, I don't even know what you want to call it, it's not even these steps all the way along the ridgeline, and it is insane.
Yeah, in August of 2012, a singer by the name of Don Tiki, and there was a comedian by the name of Fritz Hassenpooch. They actually died of a heart attack while trying to walk up these stairs.
Well, yeah, that's 4,000 steps and super high.
I know.
What did you say that? How high?
3,922 stairs.
No, how high up is the point of where the radio station?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's right at the top. I looked
Clearly,
for that.
It's not at the bottom, but. Well,
but anyway, back to Daylenn. Like I said, an intense search was conducted for 5 days with no results.
Right.
Now, authorities believe that he had somehow fallen over the side and his body would most likely never be found. Now, this is possible. This is a possible solution because, as you can see from the photo.
Oh wait, I switched. Hold on, I gotta switch back. Sorry.
There are steep cliffs on both sides and also a very dense forest. And if this is what happened, then in my opinion, the body will most likely never be found. Or if it is, then it would probably be by accident. But anyway, his family still search for him. They have not given up. And some of them believe that he met with foul play. And the reason for this is that while looking through all of the photos that Daylenn posted on social media, they discovered something that the authorities missed. In the last photo he posted, at first glance, it looks like he took a photo to not only show that he was on the trail, but also the view in this vast, dense forest. Well, his family noticed something that was a bit strange, and when they enlarged the area, it appears to be a man almost hidden by a bush. Now, I tried to get permission to use the photo, but the Facebook page seems to be gone, and I could not find a place to contact anyone, so we'll post a link to that photo so you can take a look at it.
Right, it's already, I'm going to put it in the reference thing. I label, like, photo, newspaper, so you know each section, but yeah, it's kind of creepy, because this guy's off the path, off the stairway path, up in the foliage or jungle-y, whatever plant
it's like he's squatting behind a bush, really.
Either he got wore out and he heard people coming up the stairs and thought maybe that was possible police or whoever's going to come and arrest him for being up there. So maybe he hopped off the trail and he was hiding
that is a possibility, because it was against the law to be on that trail. Mm-hmm. And it could have very well have been someone who heard Daylenn coming and went down and was hiding.
Right.
You know, he didn't want to get arrested.
Or it could have been a other thing. I mean, it could have been not a good dude either. You know what I mean? Well,
that's true. There, you know, I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities with it. But it does look like a man in the photo. You know, and it is possible that Daylenn didn't see him because there was no mention of a man when the photo was posted.
Right.
And no one knows who this person might be or what he was doing behind the bush, because he has not been found and he has not come forward.
Right. But he was also ways up from him because the guy was in the photo taking a selfie, and then you see the other guy way up in the background, and they zoomed in. And you'll see the zoomed in photos, and you kind of, you know, he had shaved short hair, this guy did, but he was just kicking back up there. But why was he kicking back up there? It makes you wonder, like, did they cross paths? Did something happen?
And this was something that Daylenn's family found. The authorities missed this completely. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they looked at this, and there was something not right about the photo, so they zoomed in on it. And I've seen the photo, and like I said, we're going to post a link to it.
Right.
And it does appear to be a man by that bush.
Yeah, because Daylenn was in the original photo. He was taking
he was taking a selfie
and posting them on Facebook while he was on this hike. And you know, one of his
he had posted several photographs. It's just that this particular one, which was the last one he posted, and it was posted at 11 a.m., and then the posting stopped.
Right.
And, I mean, his family are still looking for him. And like I said, this is very recent. This was just just last year. So
What happened to him?
Yeah, what happened to him? I mean, did he fall off the cliff? Some do seem to think that that's what happened. And it does seem possible. I mean, that you wouldn't get me up there.
Well, I did read articles of the search teams that were out searching for him, and his family was searching. They had trained professional people searching, volunteers and stuff who can do that terrain and stuff.
Right.
And there was people out there who said that they heard somebody hollering for help in one section.
Yeah, there were hikers up there that said that they had heard someone yelling for help, but they didn't find it. They conducted an intense search looking for him.
Well, and
but the search lasted like 5 days.
But the family still is trying to, at the time when this occurred, and for a while, they were trying to get the search party to start up again. They actually started a GoFundMe site that people were contributing to help find Daylenn. And it's still up.
Right.
And if you guys want to contribute to the family, even just, for whatever reason you can, it's still there to help. But, he could have possibly slipped off because it rains up there, it gets windy. They're not the best of stairs. You can Google, this area.
Well, when it rains, metal stairs are going to get slick anyway.
Well, right. And
and some people even believe that he met with foul play from the supposed man in the photo.
Yeah, it's a possibility. You don't know who you're running into up on this area where it's already, you just don't know.
You just don't know because, like I said, in 2015 alone, there were 433 people that received tickets and 11 that were arrested. And unfortunately, this is one mystery that just may never be solved because finding him is going to be next to impossible.
Right, just because of where the area is, and they don't know exactly if he could have possibly slipped off, or if he made it down and met foul play down below or up above.
Right.
Because
they just did not find any sign of him. They didn't even find he was up there taking photos with his cell phone. They didn't even find a cell phone.
Right, and it's not. Well, it can't. Like I said, these areas don't have the best, pinging to where it's going to bring you like exact coordinates. Like this section is where you're going to find this person. It doesn't work that great, but it can bring you into an area where you can begin to do, searches. But this area is, it's extremely dangerous, and it draws, thrill seekers in to this, haiku stairs, whatever it's called. But when I was Googling it and YouTubing, and after I found out what you were doing and, how you looked into mine and stuff, I found out that some people have gone up there and they've actually put a swing at the top of the stairs that allows people to swing out over the steep drops. Now, it's attached to these, two rusty poles. And I don't even know. You have to be, seriously crazy to do that. But they were showing this video of this person trying to hop on these ropes that are tied across. And then these other stupid ropes hanging down with this little wooden thing you sit on. And you just swing out over this mountain down into death.
You have to be a serious adrenaline junkie or absolutely nuts to get on that swing.
Well, I watched these people that were swinging out, and the girl slipped off the swing, and she was hanging on by the two ropes, and her other friends were standing behind the railing here. They were trying to reach out to try to get her, and they're like, swing back to us, and she was trying to swing back to her, and this one guy was hanging out on the outside of the rail, off the stairs, had one arm on the railing trying to reach for her leg, and he almost fell down trying to grab her, So, I mean, it's not like the safest of areas. So, it's possible that while he was out there and the conditions changed, he could possibly have slipped, or, maybe something happened to him because it's the elevation of this area, and you know, watching the people who were going up this in the YouTube video.
He could have gotten off those stairs and tried to get close to one of those edges to take a photo and could have fell off.
Yeah.
There's
whatever the case is, it's horrible what happened.
Yes, it is.
To Daylenn. He was, I don't even think was he just 18 or just about to turn 18?
He was 18. It said he was 18 years old.
Yeah, and you know, he does have a Facebook page up. I went to look, and I think one of the last public posts was him saying how he's excited and he was heading out for the stairs right then and there. And you know, of course, then he had posted some selfies or whatever, but I think those are not, you know, open unless your friend's on the list or whatever. But you know, his family are still have hope that, you know, maybe he came down and he, you know, something happened. He might have hit his head, might not have awareness of who he is, but they're, you know, if anybody has any information, you know, please reach out and contact these sites that we put out there. You know, even if it's not even a lot, just a little bit goes a long way. It helps put people in a certain direction or whatever. But, you know, if you do plan on, you know, visiting any one of these, you know, national parks or forests or monuments or whatever, our advice, you know, would be to educate yourself, you know, bring the proper gear, you know, talk thoroughly with the game wardens and park rangers for tips or tricks, you know, and most of all, just stay safe and educate yourself before heading out. And even if you're with professional hunting guides, and even if you have all this stuff, something can happen so easy. And
make sure you tell people where you are going and don't go alone.
Right. And it's just like, we're hoping by doing these shows that we keep these cases out there, and that somebody might know something or say something, you know, because, you know, maybe they were kidnapped or taken. I mean, there are people who live out in these mountainous areas and snatch people up. You know, you just don't know. But I just I found it so weird, especially just my two cases, how these people just like that, you know, not even, I don't know. Spooky, why don't you let everybody know what we're going to be doing on our next show?
Okay, I would like to thank Richard and Doppel, our monitors, for a good job, and
thank you, Doppel, for helping us out.
And to Raven for a good show, and for everyone coming. Join us for our next show, which I believe is March 6th, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, when we're going to discuss Deadliest Women Throughout History, Amy Archer Gilligan and Linda Burfield Hazard. Now, I'm going to give you a warning. Some of the content may be disturbing to some, so listener discretion is advised. And thank you for coming. Please subscribe to us, give us a like, and please share us with others on any social media site you happen to be a part of.
Right. We just want to thank you guys all for coming. And, you know, like we always say, if you want to get show reminders, you can either click here on our YouTube next to our Spooky Raven name, and you can sign up there and subscribe. Or you can go to our website, anythingbutordinary2.wix.com/anythingbutordinary, and you can sign up for weekly email reminders for our live shows on YouTube. Or you can contact us there if you guys have any like show ideas, or you just want to have like friendly banter or whatever. But we hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you March 6th for our next show on Deadliest Women Throughout History. Thank you guys all for coming, and good night.
Good night.